New details as well as new reporting have emerged about the murder of Renee Good in Minnesota by ICE agent Jonathan Ross. That not only was a horrendous act in its own right, but also sparked massive protests that continue until today. Ever since the shooting, as I'm sure you're well aware, the administration as well as MAGA pundits have tried their best to paint Ross as the actual victim, saying that he shot her in self-defense, that he was run over by her car. CBS News even somewhat recently ran a story saying that he suffered internal bleeding. And so they said, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent who fatally shot Renee Good last week in Minneapolis, Jonathan Ross, suffered internal bleeding to the torso following the incident, according to 2 US officials briefed on his medical condition. It was unclear how extensive the bleeding was. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed Ross's injury, but has not yet responded to CBS News's requests for more information. And that's CBS they're denying more information for, which almost certainly would have spun it in a positive way for them. But anyway, we know from the videos and from the early reporting eyewitness accounts that he was able to walk away from the incident. He seemed perfectly fine. Details about what the supposed internal bleeding are there's basically nothing at this point. And obviously he did not get run over. The word over has a meaning if anybody wants to look it up. But anyway, we do have this new frame by frame analysis of the shooting. Why don't we dive into that?
More footage will likely emerge, but the currently available visual evidence still shows no indication Agent Jonathan Ross got run over. We can see the agent's foot sliding, his hand bracing against the SUV, and his arm getting pressed into his chest. It is impossible to determine if this is happening because of the SUV's movement or the icy asphalt, or more likely, both. And what's very unclear because of the limited quality and availability of footage is whether the agent's upper body gets swiped by the vehicle as his left foot slides back. This moment is when Agent Ross fires. We see the other agent pull back from the SUV. Both of them stumble, apparently slipping on the ice. This is also the moment many have said looks like Agent Ross getting run over. And it does when watched at full speed. But looking more closely, we can see in multiple angles that there's a visible gap between the vehicle and his legs. None of the bullets have the effect of stopping the SUV. But they kill Renee Good.
So that's a good analysis by the New York Times. I'm glad they did that. Again, I'm frustrated by them continuing to use run over when there's no car over him. At most, he would maybe have been hit. That is still, as you saw in the video, very much up for dispute, but he definitely wasn't run over. And you can see when they pause for the first shot, he is fully to the side of the car when he fires that shot. He had already stepped out of the way. Arguably, he could have stepped out of the way quite faster if he had not been trying to murder her while that was happening. And so we're gonna get into more of this, including the revelation that some in CBS News still think that they should be a journalistic enterprise, and we're not happy with basically the airing of government propaganda about the supposed internal bleeding. We'll get to that in just a bit. But Jordan, what did you make of some of these updates as well as the frame by frame?
I mean, why are we just hearing now about this internal bleeding claim? It took a week for them to realize that. As we'll see medical experts cast doubt on that. You can look at the footage. I think the problem for me is that we are being browbeaten by this administration into accepting their narrative. And their narrative squarely puts the blame on Renee Good, a dead woman. They have demonized her. They have attacked her character. We're seeing attempts to investigate her widow.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? It is so easy for any responsible administration or government figure to just say, look, we're gonna take a closer look. We're gonna investigate. We're gonna review all of the evidence and we'll make a determination. They don't want to do that. They are unwilling to analyze, to investigate, to examine any further. They made up their mind moments after she died. This woman was a terrorist and it's her fault, and that officer did nothing wrong, or that agent did nothing wrong. Despite the fact that their story in their retelling of what happened was wrong. They were already sure this woman was a terrorist and it was her fault as they were getting details wrong. It shows a complete unwillingness for any accountability or transparency, and it is disgusting. It's absolutely repugnant.
Yeah. I mean, like I would say if there has been anything truly consistent in this administration, in this movement, it is the unwillingness to ever take responsibility for what you've done or any mistakes that you've made. I don't know that I can point to a single time that Donald Trump has done that. And I know that he will not accept it by those in his administration. You do that, that could actually get you fired. Doing this sort of surge that results in someone being killed and maybe even tanks your polling. He doesn't seem to mind that so much. Being drunk on the job while you're Secretary of Defense, bombing innocent fishermen. Again, he doesn't care about that. But if you were to own up to that and take responsibility for it, admit that mistakes had been made, I have a feeling he would see that as a sign of weakness when it is the exact opposite. Now, CBS News is not formally, really saying anything about the fact that they just ran with this internal bleeding thing without any actual proof or more details beyond that very vague label. But some inside of CBS News apparently did have an issue with it. And The Guardian was able to get access to some emails making that clear. The report from CBS News was met with, quote, huge internal concern by some, one CBS News staffer said. Others viewed the conversations as standard editorial discussions. Before the original report was published, a medical producer at CBS suggested in an email to colleagues that, quote, it would be helpful to ask what type of treatment he received. In another email, an executive expressed skepticism about the broad nature of the medical diagnosis and what it actually entailed, saying, quote, I'm no doctor, but internal bleeding is a very broad term and can range in severity. A bruise is internal bleeding, but it can also be something serious. We do know that the ICE agent walked away from the incident. We have that on camera. And I am not a doctor like Dr. David Reiter is there, or that's actually CBS News senior vice president. But I will say, if it was serious, we'd have more details. If they had done scans and blood was pooling in his lungs, that would be on Jesse Waters' show tonight. You know that. And it didn't happen because he's not actually injured. You can see it in the video. We'll end though with a slightly more positive take. One other CBS News staffer says, felt to many here like we were carrying water for the admin's justifying of the shooting to keep our access to our sources. That's one reason perhaps why at CBS News you'd be carrying water for the administration. It's not the only one. Do you know where you work? Do you know what's going on there? I feel like maybe they're blocking it out because the truth is just too horrible. But anyway, there's as of yet no reason to believe the internal bleeding stuff. You just have to accept that. And I would just throw out there, like, if people still think that he was run over or he needed to do what he did, they probably can't be reached in any way. But I would ask you this question. If he had just stepped out of the way of the car and had not pulled his gun, had not shot her, what do you think would have happened? Tell me you are crazy enough to think that she was going to race down the street and then she was gonna curve the car around, then she was gonna take another pass and because she had to see him dead. Like, tell me that you are that crazy to believe that. Had he stepped to the side, he would be fine and she would have left. And that would have been the entirety of it. He wouldn't have killed her. We wouldn't have these protests. I mean, they might have still done something else horrific that would have resulted in the protests, but almost everybody would be better off. Anyway, that's my thoughts, Jordan. Before we proceed to more, tell me what you're thinking right now.
Yeah, and even before that, before she turned her wheel and tried to get away from a masked stranger aiming a gun at her, her last words to him were, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you."
Yeah.
We lost sight of that. This is from the cell phone footage that he filmed because he was on his phone the entire time. That's where that footage comes from. Of course, violating protocol, and of course, standing in front of a vehicle is violating protocol, and firing into a vehicle that's fleeing violates protocol. They don't care about that. And the other detail in that video is that when he's on the other side of the car, the passenger side, there's some words exchanged between her wife, Miss Good's wife, and this agent. He then switches his phone to his left hand before he even gets to the front of the car.
Yeah.
To me, he knew what he wanted to do and he did it.
Yeah.
And the administration is lying about it because they want her to be the victim and they want to shield all of these agents, many of whom have no or little training, zero vetting, zero background checks, as we've seen this week with the Slate piece. They're going to give him total immunity.
Yeah.
And they're lying about a victim.
100%.
So I don't think that he was ever in any danger. I think that you're pointing out yet another reason to believe that he knew what he wanted to do. But if you believe that he was in danger, that she was trying to kill him, or even accidentally he could be run over. And if you believe that he believed that, there is a case to be made that he was willing to be run over if that meant that he could shoot her. Because he stepped in front of the car, even though he knows he's not supposed to. And even though he had been hit months prior. And even though grabbing for his gun and shooting at her did slow down his ability to step out of the way. Now he was able to step out of the way because she wasn't trying to hit him. But it kind of seemed like he cared more about shooting her than saving his own life at that moment.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.